Bet you're curious what that is all about, because you gotta catch a unicorn before you can greenwash it. So one day I was doing my YouTube research, and an ad pops up. In fact, the ad was an entire episode of something called Unicorn Hunters, which is a show put on by a private company. And it's supposed to be kind of like Shark Tank, but with a slant. And their episode was about something called mechanical trees, which was about, well, let me first show you what the first claim of this that got me hooked into the show was.
We believe this technology has the ultimate potential to solve climate change, and we would love for you to join us in our mission.
Sounds good.
Yeah, wow, that's got my attention. What is that technology? It can solve global warming. Wow, I haven't heard of that yet.
I'm really excited.
That needs to be, yeah. So here's what the gentleman explains about this technology.
What are mechanical trees? A mechanical tree is a drum. It is 2.5 meters high and 1.5 meters wide, and it has 150 discs sitting inside. Those discs are lifted up in the air 10 meters high, and they separate. And as they separate, they allow the flow of air to come through. There is a material inside those discs that tracks the CO2, collects the CO2, and then the discs fall back into the drum. We put the lid on, and we inject a light steam, a low temperature source of heat that allows the CO2 to be released from that sorbent and collected. We then dry it, compress it, and it's ready for use.
Wow.
Where does the CO2 go?
It's being packed. It's being used in the industry.
Oh.
So, all right. So that was the presentation, and that's quite a big statement to make, that this is the solution for global warming, right? Now, here's they continue questioning him. And here's Wozniak, who's one of the panelists, and they selected all kinds of people on the panel, some of them financial people, some of them supposedly scientific people. Wozniak was one of those, and they were supposed to...
He's a very nice guy, Wozniak.
I'm sure he's a nice guy, but here's what he asked.
Take CO2 out of the atmosphere.
When you said 80 kilograms of CO2 per tree, is that per year or something? Per day, I mean, per day. What percentage would 1 million trees be of the total CO2 that is emitted already?
We think that we have to get to something like 5 million tons a day facilities to start making material difference to the balance of CO2.
But have you been speaking to any of the buyers of CO2?
Of course, yes. So I mentioned the beverages industry. We're speaking to a number of the major players there. In the automotive sector, we're talking to many of them. And they've approached us because they want the technology on their sites to reduce their carbon dioxide footprint.
So what is interesting about this is, if you make the calculation about it, if that estimate is correct, and you need 5 million trees, 5 million tons to be removed.
Yeah, he didn't say how many trees that would take.
Well,
he only said how many tons.
Yeah, but the calculation here, I made the calculation, 5 million tons, each of the trees makes 80 kilograms a day. That brings it to 62.5 million mechanical trees. Can you even put your mind around that? 62.5 million trees.
Well, what about getting rid of the CO2 that the trees put out? because you had to use oil, you had to use material, you had to import parts from China to make those trees. Come on. I mean,
yes, you have a carbon cost in production of these trees. Of course, that would produce CO2, and ultimately their claim is, we're going to use green energy to power these trees. But if you use green energy to power these trees, then you're not using it elsewhere, and we're in deficit.
Yeah, that's always a thing that people leave out about green energy. That claim was made, I heard just the other day about crypto, right? We can in fact, recently on one of our our brother shows, Oz, hello, they put out something about that, and hard to believe.
And then there is this guy asking, well, if I understand correctly, you're gonna take, and this is a guy who worked for Al Gore, and he says, well, I forgot everything, but to clarify, you're taking these trees you're producing, extracting CO2 out of the air, and you're producing green carbon. Like, there is such a thing like green carbon. Carbon dioxide is carbon dioxide. There's no green carbon dioxide. What supposedly makes this green is the fact that they're using green energy to power these things, and that it is produced at the point of consumption, rather than have to be packed and delivered, transferred to another location in gas tanks. So that's what makes it green, but there's nothing green about it. And that brings me to the biggest point that everybody completely ignored in this program, in this show, and that is that their whole business model for it is extracting the carbon dioxide in order to repackage it and sell it so that it can be used and released into the atmosphere again.
Physicians, heal thyself. It's impossible. So in other words, it's not going to reduce the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. It's just going to stop producing new carbon dioxide, and that is the best possible scenario. If they put 62.5 million of these trees out and power everything with green power, then potentially you can stop putting new carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and halt the progress of things. It does not do anything to remove the carbon from the atmosphere. And here's another little clip that someone asks, that again they stick to that question about the number of trees, and here's what they answer.
First, I am a math and science guy. This type of innovation is so up my alley. I've been lucky enough to chair the executive board of the Environmental Media Association for years, so I'm very educated about this. But realistically, how many of these trees would we need in this world to combat the climate right now?
Well, so one actual natural tree, we need 1,000 of those over their life to collect the same amount of CO2 as one mechanical tree.
Okay. Oh, wow. That's nice. Okay. And then.
Okay. And now what he said actually doesn't mean anything, because he didn't set up any reference for this answer. What is it, over the lifetime of the mechanical tree? Is it over a year? Is it over a day? What are you even talking about? Is it considering that the carbon in those trees gets released when the trees are decomposed? Well, like, what
or is he talking General Sherman in California, the tallest tree in the world or whatever, or is he talking about the shrub in my backyard?
There's just no way to qualitate this answer, and it's bullshit. And nobody really nobody challenged this guy in this program. They were all, some of them were talking about like financial details that were not disclosed or whatever, or the license was just being there's a fee for the license, they don't own the license, whatever. They were focusing on these things, none of that on the technology or the actual environmental aspect of it. And that brings me to the point that these shows, and it's not just these shows, the media in general, wants you to buy into this idea that technology is the solution. It's never been the solution. Technology may help in some aspects, but it's ultimately not the solution, because it creates new problems. When the FDR administration solved the power issue with putting in huge dams, that created the Dust Bowl famine, because it created desert conditions in places that were not desert before, and that destroyed the agriculture in a whole part of the country. And so the hubris of humanity is just beyond what we can handle here. And the fact is that these narratives are being propagated, and it is extremely important for all of us to be quickly get a quick education in media literacy. If we watch something like that, we immediately have to recognize the bullshit, and it's extremely important that we address these things and bring a whole generation to that point where they can look at the bullshit show like this and see it for what it is. So that's what I wanted. That's why I wanted to focus on that story.
It's hard to identify the bullshit without some scientific, some background. But I agree with you. Yep. We got to get better at spotting the bullshit. The fact is, I'm a science guy myself. I've been a total science nerd all my life. But if you go on my blog or you listen to me, I'm always ranting. I sound anti-technology. I sound Luddite half the time. And what is it? I can finally explain it. I can explain it because I'm a science nerd. I want to know how things work. I get into this stuff, and I know that technology exists to serve people and not the other way around. Where a problem we have is, people who do not understand technology who say, it doesn't interest them enough. They're kind of, awestruck by it because they don't understand. As people, the human beings are the most technical animal on the earth. We are all about technology. And when you understand what technology is, it's a simple thing as using a tool. Use a rock to break something open. That's technology, because you're using the outside world. It's technology. And one thing that happens because we are so technical is we ignore the consequences of our technology. If you're running away from a lion, it's not a good idea to do a calculation on how fast you can run and how fast a lion can run, and which, you start to run, you don't waste time. And so that sounds kind of like a ridiculous analogy, but it does bring out the point. See, when you think about technology, it takes time, it takes effort when you're using technology to solve a problem. So it's natural to ignore the consequences of it. There's nothing wrong with that part of it. The problem is our society encourages it. So what is a natural blind spot that we have to overcome is exaggerated. And so what we have in the media is we have a media that's dedicated to supporting commerce. It's supported by advertising. It exists to entertain, make people feel good. What I'm saying in a nice way, it exists to support the status quo. It does not challenge the ways we do things, and that's for small time shows like ours to do, if we have any value at all. and so
we're not the ones that have the money. And thank you very much, Dan, for your contribution. We greatly appreciate it. But these institutions that put out these distracting shows that distract us from the real goals, they have millions of dollars. I don't even know who's financing those things, but there's probably some motivation behind putting that material out that we are not aware of. But nevertheless, they just like we can't compete with that kind of megaphone. So it's important to do that in every other way possible.
Well, that's true. But what they're saying, what they're advocating is the system is going to fix itself. This very society that caused the problem is going to use the means the society already has in place to solve the problems that very machine caused.
Right.
One way to attack it would be to say, the beverage industry is not big enough to capture all those bubbles. There's no way. But then we're kind of playing their game. It's better, to just really say what this is, and it's appealing to the human natural fascination for technology, and they're hanging out there like a fishhook, saying we can do things without having to change our ways, without having to make fundamental changes in the way we do things. And the truth is, the only way America is going to survive as a nation, we're going to survive as a people. I'm going off here. Oh, toot the flag. As a species, is unless we change our ways, and unless we understand what we are doing and what we can do to change our ways to produce a better outcome. Because just by tweaking things, we're not going to be able to fix it. Like this is another form of geoengineering, and with a different name. And geoengineering by itself is a flawed idea. Who's going to pay for it? Who's going to provide the international coordination? Where is the energy going to come from?
Right.
That is the big one.
The idea in this
You're going to burn fossil fuels to get fossil fuels out of the air. How does that work? Have you done any math calculations to figure out the molar volume that's involved and the energies it takes? And you find out that, that equation doesn't work.
Right.
It takes more energy to take it out than it does to put it in.
But even in this one, on the surface of this business model, what they're doing is like they're creating this system in order to produce CO2 that they can sell. And who are they going to sell that quantity of CO2? Who needs the 5 million tons of CO2 per day? How are you going to justify that on a financial level, like just from a business perspective? That's bullshit.
Yeah, no bank's going to lend money for that.
So there you got it.